The richest man in the room was the one nobody bothered to notice. The Atlantic breeze carried the scent of salt water across Newport Harbor as luxury vehicles lined the entrance of the grand seaside pavilion. Beneath crystal chandeliers and banners announcing one of the most exclusive yacht auctions on the East Coast, executives, investors, and celebrities arrived dressed for an evening of prestige and competition. A sleek black Bentley rolled to a stop at the front entrance. Victoria Langford stepped out with practiced confidence, her heels clicking against the stone walkway. At 36, she was one of the youngest CEOs in the marine industry, a woman whose decisions could move markets and whose signature could change the future of companies overnight. Cameras flashed. Guests greeted her by name. Everything felt exactly as it should. Then her eyes landed on a weathered blue Ford F-150 parked near the VIP entrance. The truck looked completely out of place among the luxury sedans and imported sports cars. Its paint had faded under years of sun and sea air. The chrome bumper showed signs of age. Victoria slowed her pace and frowned. "Who allowed that thing to park here?" she asked one of the event coordinators. The young man glanced toward the truck nervously. "I'm not sure, Ms. Langford." Victoria shook her head. "This is a $90 million auction, not a salvage yard." A few nearby guests chuckled politely. At that exact moment, the driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out wearing a simple brown jacket, jeans, and work boots. His appearance was clean but unremarkable. He looked more like a craftsman than someone attending an elite auction. He walked around the truck and opened the passenger door. A 12-year-old girl climbed out carrying a small backpack. The man's expression softened instantly. "Ready, Lily?" he asked. "I have been ready for 20 minutes, the girl replied with a grin. Victoria watched the exchange with mild amusement. Surely they had the wrong address. Perhaps they were delivering supplies. Maybe maintenance staff. The man closed the truck door and adjusted the strap of the girl's backpack. He seemed completely unaware of the attention he was drawing. Or perhaps he simply did not care. Victoria approached with a polite smile that failed to hide her judgment. "Excuse me," she said. "The public marina is about 2 miles south." The man looked at her calmly. "Good to know." Victoria waited for confusion. None came. "This event is private," she added. "Yes, it is." "You are attending?" "I am." The answer was delivered without arrogance, without apology, without explanation. The harbor lights reflected across the water behind him. Seagulls drifted above distant yachts rocking gently against their moorings. For some reason, his calmness irritated her more than any argument could have. Lily glanced between them and quietly held her father's hand. Victoria crossed her arms. "Well, I hope you enjoy the evening." "Thank you," the man replied. "You too." He turned and began walking toward the entrance with Lily beside him. Victoria watched them go. The girl seemed happy. The man seemed completely at ease. Neither looked intimidated by the luxury surrounding them. As they reached the security checkpoint, one of the attendants immediately straightened his posture. His eyes widened with recognition. Then he smiled and greeted the man with unusual respect. Victoria could not hear what was said, but she did see something else. The attendant handed him a black invitation card reserved only for the most important guests at the auction. And for the first time that evening, Victoria Langford felt the faintest hint that she might have misjudged the owner of the old truck. Caleb Whitaker navigated the crowded auction hall with practiced ease, his worn brown jacket brushing against the polished marble floors while Lily held tightly to his hand, her small fingers curling around his. The room buzzed with soft conversation, clinking glasses, and the occasional camera flash from journalists documenting the night. But Caleb moved through it all with quiet confidence, ignoring the glances and subtle whispers directed at his plain clothing and simple demeanor, focusing only on the display of the restored yacht in the center of the hall. He knelt briefly beside Lily to adjust her backpack, smiling warmly as she marveled at the teak decks gleaming under the chandelier lights, the reflection dancing across her wide eyes, completely absorbed in the craftsmanship of the vessel. Unaware of the judgmental stare from the other attendees, Victoria Langford, in her tailored midnight blue suit, observed them from across the hall, noting every detail. The faded blue of Caleb's truck visible in her mind, the gentle posture he held with his daughter, the calmness in his expression that contrasted sharply with the opulence surrounding them, and her curiosity mixed with irritation, thinking he was an unimportant bystander at first glance. while she prepared to assert her influence. In the upcoming bidding, Caleb's gaze drifted to the yacht's polished railings, running his fingers lightly along a carved emblem, and he whispered to Lily the history of the vessel, pointing out the subtle repairs and touches he had made himself over the years, demonstrating the patience and care he had invested. The kind of knowledge only someone who had devoted time and heart could possess. Victoria stepped closer, her heels clicking softly on the marble, intent on observing what she assumed was a worker who might not even understand the significance of the yacht. But something in the way he spoke with his daughter, the deliberate care in every movement, caused her to pause and reconsider her assumptions. Noting a grace and composure that did not belong to the man she had dismissed moments ago, Caleb continued speaking, his voice calm and measured, never raising it above a conversational tone, sharing small anecdotes about the ship's restoration and the importance of precision and patience, his words drawing Lily in and subtly captivating other nearby observers who had begun to notice his quiet authority. Victoria, watching him, felt a strange shift in perception, realizing that wealth was not always displayed through clothing or car or titles, but through knowledge, calmness, and the manner in which one commanded attention without demanding it. As the auctioneer prepared the microphone and participants began taking their positions around the yacht, Caleb stood upright, holding Lily's hand loosely, smiling at the moment of anticipation while remaining fully unassuming, a silent contrast to the grandeur and tension around them, embodying dignity and quiet presence that set him apart in ways Victoria was only beginning to comprehend. She adjusted the lapel of her blazer, her gaze still fixed on Caleb, a mix of intrigue and disbelief crossing her face. Recognizing for the first time that this man she had judged by appearances alone might hold a story far more compelling and important than the world around them realized, creating a tension in the room that would shape the rest of the evening. The auction hall gradually settled into silence as guests found their seats beneath the glow of crystal chandeliers. Outside, Newport Harbor shimmered beneath the evening sky, rows of luxury yachts swaying gently against their moorings while distant fog horns echoed across the water. Inside, anticipation filled the room. Every person present knew the centerpiece of the evening would soon take the stage. Victoria Langford adjusted the cuff of her blazer and reviewed the figures on her tablet one final time. Her company needed this acquisition. The yacht represented far more than prestige. It would secure partnerships, attract investors, and strengthen Langford Marine Holdings during one of the most competitive years in its history. She was prepared to outbid anyone necessary. Across the room, Caleb Whitaker sat quietly beside Lily. While other guests discussed valuations and investment strategies, he listened as his daughter pointed excitedly toward the harbor through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Do you think it looks bigger from the water?" she asked. Caleb smiled. "Everything looks different from the water. Better. Sometimes. Sometimes it just looks more honest." Lily nodded thoughtfully, as if considering the answer. The auctioneer finally stepped onto the stage. The room immediately quieted. Spotlights illuminated a massive screen displaying images of the yacht from every angle. Gasps and murmurs swept through the audience as footage revealed polished teak decks, handcrafted interiors, and elegant lines stretching nearly 200 feet across the harbor. The vessel looked less like a yacht and more like a floating masterpiece. "Ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer announced, "welcome to one of the most extraordinary offerings ever presented in Newport." Applause echoed through the ballroom. Victoria leaned forward confidently. This was her world. Numbers. Strategy. Competition. The screen shifted to reveal restoration photographs showing the vessel years earlier. Rusted metal. Weather-damaged decks. Faded paint. The contrast was astonishing. Guests exchanged surprised looks. Over 6 years of meticulous restoration transformed this vessel into what you see today. The auctioneer continued. Every detail was preserved with extraordinary care. Victoria studied the images. Whoever had completed that work possessed uncommon skill. Nearby, Caleb remained silent. Lily glanced up at him proudly. "They are talking about your work," she whispered. Caleb simply squeezed her hand. The bidding rules appeared on the screen. Victoria reviewed them quickly. Then her expression changed. She read the final line again, and then a third time. A low murmur spread across the room. "Interesting," someone whispered. "That cannot be right." Victoria frowned. The auctioneer raised a hand. One important clarification. The final decision will not be determined solely by the highest bid. The room became still. The owner reserves the right to select the buyer. Several executives exchanged confused looks. Victoria felt immediate irritation. Wealth usually simplified negotiations. This arrangement complicated everything. One investor stood. "Are you saying the highest offer may be rejected?" "That is correct," replied the auctioneer. The investor sat down slowly. Victoria folded her arms. For the first time that evening, money alone offered no guarantee. The harbor lights reflected through the ballroom windows. Champagne glasses glimmered beneath soft golden light. A sense of uncertainty spread through the room. Then the auctioneer smiled. "The owner believes some things carry value beyond price." Victoria glanced instinctively toward Caleb. He was still sitting quietly beside Lily, completely unconcerned by the tension filling the room. And somehow, that bothered her even more. Caleb Whitaker rose from his seat, standing beside Lily as they approached the central display where the yacht gleamed under spotlighting. Every polished teak surface and brass fitting reflecting the ambient golden glow of chandeliers above. Victoria Langford followed closely, heels clicking against the marble floor, her gaze fixed on Caleb with a mixture of skepticism and intrigue, still convinced he was a simple craftsman rather than someone of significance, while the room's attention subtly shifted toward the pair as whispers spread among the wealthy guests. The auctioneer gestured toward the restored vessel, his voice steady, explaining the intricate details of the craftsmanship and the extraordinary care invested over 6 years, yet each sentence only heightened the mystery surrounding Caleb's presence, who moved with quiet dignity, acknowledging nods from a few observant participants who sensed there was more to him than met the eye. Victoria's frown deepened as she realized that authority, expertise, and influence did not always announce themselves with opulence or attire. And Caleb's calm composure contrasted sharply with the tension in the room, commanding respect without demanding it, while Lily's eyes sparkled as she traced her fingers along a miniature replica of the yacht set on the display table, listening intently to her father's explanations about how every detail mattered. The auctioneer signaled that bidding would soon begin, and the guests turned to prepare their paddles. But the announcement that the owner reserved the right to select the buyer caused a ripple of uncertainty, catching Victoria off guard. For the rules implied that the highest offer would not automatically secure ownership. Murmurs filled the hall as people speculated who might hold such authority, glances darting toward Caleb, who remained composed, exuding patience and quiet confidence, his unassuming clothing and gentle demeanor masking the experience and judgment that set him apart from every other attendee. Victoria's eyes narrowed, curiosity replacing annoyance, as she watched Caleb lean slightly to adjust Lily's hair and explain the subtle intricacies of the vessel's restoration, gestures precise yet tender, demonstrating knowledge that clearly went beyond casual observation. The room seemed to hold its collective breath as the realization slowly dawned on a few discerning guests that Caleb's presence might not be incidental, that he was not simply a bystander but someone whose expertise, vision, and investment had shaped the very yacht they sought to acquire. Victoria's mind raced, a mixture of disbelief and intrigue, as she considered the possibility that she had misjudged him entirely, that the man who had appeared humble and out of place in the opulent setting could, in fact, be the custodian of something invaluable, a living testament to dedication, skill, and understated authority, setting the stage for a confrontation that would redefine the evening and shift her understanding of wealth, power, and true influence. The first bid came quickly. A hedge fund executive lifted his paddle and offered $72 million. Another bidder immediately countered with 74. The numbers climbed steadily through the ballroom, each announcement drawing fresh murmurs from the audience. Crystal glasses reflected the warm light overhead, while the harbor beyond the windows shimmered beneath the moonlit sky. Victoria Langford sat perfectly still, listening, calculating, waiting. This was the stage she knew best. Timing mattered as much as money. Across the room, Caleb Whitaker remained seated beside Lily, completely detached from the competition unfolding around him. He was not studying rivals. He was not reviewing figures. Instead, he quietly pointed toward a photograph displayed on the large screen showing the yacht during its earliest restoration phase. "That was the first week," he whispered. Lily smiled. "It looked impossible. Most worthwhile things do at first." His answer carried the calm certainty of experience. Victoria glanced toward him again. The contrast felt almost absurd. $100 million could potentially change hands tonight. Yet Caleb looked as relaxed as a man watching a sunset. The bidding reached $81 million. Then 83. Several participants began dropping out. The atmosphere grew more intense with each passing minute. Finally, Victoria raised her paddle. $85 million. The auctioneer nodded. "Thank you, Ms. Langford." $85 million. Heads turned throughout the room. Investors exchanged glances. Nobody seemed surprised. Victoria had the resources. She had the reputation. Most assumed the evening would eventually belong to her. The next offer came from an international shipping magnate. $87 million. Victoria responded with 88. The numbers continued climbing until only 2 bidders remained. Silence settled heavily between each new offer. The giant screen behind the stage displayed sweeping images of the yacht cutting through open water beneath a brilliant sunrise. It looked less like property and more like a dream made tangible. Then the bidding reached $90 million exactly. The room erupted into applause. Victoria lowered her paddle confidently. The remaining bidder hesitated before finally shaking his head. The auctioneer smiled. $90 million. Going once. A pause followed. Going twice. Victoria allowed herself a small breath of relief. Then the auctioneer stopped. The room grew quiet. "Before any final decision is made, the owner has requested to address the audience personally." Confused whispers immediately spread throughout the ballroom. Victoria frowned. She had nearly forgotten the unusual condition attached to the sale. The owner would choose. The owner would decide. The owner held the final authority. The auctioneer stepped away from the podium and looked toward the audience. Then, with a respectful smile, he extended his arm. "Mr. Whitaker." Every conversation stopped. Every head turned. Caleb stood slowly from his seat. Lily looked up at him proudly. Victoria felt her heartbeat quicken. Caleb buttoned his simple brown jacket and walked toward the stage with measured steps. No dramatic entrance. No arrogance. No performance. Just quiet confidence. The crowd parted instinctively as he passed. Several guests who had ignored him earlier now watched with open disbelief. Victoria stared as Caleb climbed the stage stairs and shook hands with the auctioneer. The harbor lights reflected through the glass behind him. The massive image of the yacht filled the screen overhead. Then the auctioneer spoke the words that seemed to drain every sound from the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the owner and creator of this remarkable vessel, Mr. Caleb Whitaker." The silence that followed felt louder than any applause. Caleb Whitaker stepped to the podium, his presence calm and commanding, and began to speak about the yacht with a quiet authority that immediately captured the attention of every guest in the room. Victoria Langford listened intently, her brow furrowed, as Caleb recounted the vessel's journey from a neglected, weather-beaten hull to the meticulously restored masterpiece before them, highlighting the years of craftsmanship, patience, and care invested into every plank of teak, every polished brass fitting, and every intricate detail that spoke of dedication rather than wealth alone. He described how he had labored for 6 years, balancing restoration with the responsibility of raising his daughter, Lily, explaining the lessons of precision, patience, and respect for materials. Each word illustrating not only skill but the quiet dignity of a man whose efforts had gone unnoticed by the world until this moment. Guests leaned forward, captivated, as he shared personal stories of discovery and problem-solving, moments when plans failed, adjustments were required, and yet through determination and resilience the yacht emerged as a testament to persistence and commitment, the culmination of a vision carried out with unwavering focus. Victoria's perspective shifted subtly. With each anecdote, realizing that the value of the yacht was not measured solely in monetary terms, but in the integrity, thoughtfulness, and experience of the person who restored it, a lesson about character that contrasted sharply with her assumptions based on appearances and attire. Caleb's demeanor remained steady, never boastful, allowing the authenticity of his words and the clarity of his explanations to command respect without ostentation. his gaze occasionally meeting Victoria's, as if acknowledging her presence, while silently allowing her to reevaluate her judgment. Lily stood beside him, proud and attentive, observing the admiration growing in the audience. Yet Caleb remained focused on imparting knowledge and context, emphasizing the meaning behind each step, each decision, and each layer of work done with intention, creating an atmosphere of quiet reverence that enveloped the room. The auctioneer, standing slightly to the side, nodded in subtle approval, recognizing that Caleb had shifted the energy in the room, that the audience's understanding had transformed from seeing an object of luxury to appreciating a story of dedication, expertise, and human ingenuity, a narrative far richer than any financial figure. Victoria exhaled slowly, absorbing the lesson without needing to interject, her previous competitive mindset tempered by the realization that some victories were measured not in dollars, but in respect, understanding, and the recognition of excellence in its purest, most personal form. The harbor lights behind the windows shimmered against the calm water, reflecting a world outside that was oblivious to the effort, love, and skill displayed inside the room, emphasizing the contrast between perception and reality. And Caleb's quiet explanation illuminated the depth and complexity of achievement that was invisible until now, leaving every attendee with a profound sense of awe and a lasting impression of what true dedication could accomplish. Victoria Langford stepped closer to Caleb Whitaker, her eyes scanning the details of the yacht now fully illuminated under the auction lights, realizing with a quiet shock that the man she had underestimated was the owner and the mastermind behind every restoration effort. She recalled overhearing fragments of conversations about her father's earlier attempts to acquire the yacht years ago, and suddenly understood a deeper connection, a shared respect for dedication and craft that spanned generations, which made her previous judgment feel shallow and incomplete. Caleb spoke gently, recounting how the yacht had been abandoned and left to decay after financial setbacks, and how he had committed himself to restoring it with precision and care, investing not just skill but personal hours and patience, balancing his work with raising his daughter Lily and instilling in her a sense of responsibility and pride in the work accomplished. The audience listened intently, noticing subtle details in his speech that conveyed a lifetime of experience, problem-solving, and resilience, which transformed the perception of the yacht from a mere asset to a symbol of dedication, commitment, and personal legacy, revealing a side of Caleb that few had imagined possible. Victoria's expression softened as she watched him demonstrate an intimate understanding of the yacht's history, explaining each decision in restoration and maintenance as if the vessel were an extension of his own values, and she felt the tension of prior assumptions dissolve, replaced by admiration for his quiet authority and integrity. Whispers rippled through the guests as they realized that Caleb's authority was neither inherited nor imposed, but earned through countless hours of thoughtful, deliberate work, and Victoria felt a simultaneous sense of humility and curiosity, acknowledging the gap between wealth displayed and the substance of achievement. Lily listened with rapt attention, absorbing her father's explanations, occasionally asking questions about small technical details, her presence highlighting Caleb's dual role as both parent and craftsman, bridging personal legacy with professional mastery in a way that inspired those observing. Victoria finally met Caleb's gaze, the recognition in her eyes mirrored by the subtle nod he gave, acknowledging her newfound understanding and the respect she now held. A moment of quiet reconciliation and shared recognition of the significance of dedication beyond appearances. The auctioneer stepped aside, allowing Caleb the floor, and the room seemed to exhale collectively as the narrative of restoration, effort, and hidden mastery settled over the audience, leaving a profound impression that redefined every assumption made about him. The lights glinted off the polished wood and brass. The harbor outside reflected a serene glow, and Victoria, standing beside the man she had misjudged, felt the weight of history, dedication, and silent achievement converge into a new awareness, understanding that true influence and value were measured not by titles or appearances, but by the integrity, patience, and heart behind the work. Victoria Langford took a careful step forward as Caleb Whitaker finished his explanation, her eyes scanning the details of the yacht and the surrounding audience, realizing the significance of the moment and the quiet authority he held. The room had fallen completely silent, every attendee captivated by the revelation that the modestly dressed man she had assumed insignificant was in fact the owner, restorer, and guardian of a $90 million masterpiece, each detail of his story, revealing patience, skill, and dedication far beyond superficial appearances. Whispers rippled through the crowd as Victoria absorbed the depth of Caleb's accomplishments, understanding that the yacht represented years of labor, resilience, and personal sacrifice, all guided by integrity rather than display. And she felt a growing sense of humility for having misjudged him based solely on the old Ford F-150 she had seen earlier. Lily stood beside her father, small hand gripping his, her eyes wide with pride and curiosity, fully aware of the attention now focused on them. Yet Caleb's calm demeanor and quiet guidance provided a steady anchor in the midst of the room's shifting energy, emphasizing the dignity in his presence. Victoria's mind replayed fragments of her own family history, recalling how her father had once attempted to acquire the same vessel for reasons she had never understood, and she realized now that those efforts had been more about respect and understanding than financial gain. Mirroring the values Caleb had demonstrated through his meticulous restoration and stewardship, she stepped closer to the stage, instinctively lowering her voice, almost as if to make amends before the formal acknowledgement could be made. Noting the subtle nod Caleb offered, a silent recognition of her evolving perspective and newfound respect, the auctioneer gestured toward Caleb with a polite flourish, introducing him formally to the assembled crowd. And the room collectively exhaled as every detail of the evening's unfolding began to coalesce into a coherent story of dedication, quiet mastery, and integrity, a narrative that transcended money and status and illustrated the power of unseen effort and character. Victoria felt a rush of emotion, a combination of awe, humility, and an unexpected gratitude for witnessing the display of excellence conducted without boast. As every guest realized that the final decision of ownership was no longer merely transactional, but an acknowledgement of mastery, care, and value that could not be measured in dollars alone. Outside the windows, Newport Harbor glimmered under the moonlight, the reflections of yachts gently rocking against their moorings, while inside the hall, Caleb's presence, calm and resolute, had reshaped perceptions, subtly teaching a lesson that would linger long after the gavel fell, demonstrating that true recognition comes from understanding, respect, and the quiet power of dignity, leaving Victoria, Lily, and all witnesses with a profound sense of closure and a new awareness of the meaning behind both achievement and character. The morning sun rose over Newport Harbor, casting golden reflections across the calm water and illuminating the polished decks of the restored yacht, where Caleb Whitaker, Lily, and Victoria Langford stood together in quiet appreciation. The bustling crowd and the intense atmosphere of the previous evening were gone, replaced by a serene, almost sacred stillness that allowed the significance of the yacht, the effort behind its restoration, and the lessons of patience and dedication to settle fully into their hearts. Caleb adjusted the railing gently, showing Lily a carved emblem, his hands steady and confident, a silent reminder of years spent balancing work, family, and mastery of craft, while Victoria observed, her posture relaxed, a genuine smile replacing the professional guard she had worn for so long. Feeling the depth of character and dignity Caleb carried, Lily pointed toward the horizon, laughing softly as she imagined sailing across the harbor, and Caleb knelt beside her briefly, explaining how understanding and care in small details created a vessel worthy of the sea, a metaphor Victoria could not ignore for the larger truths in life and business. Victoria stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and looked at Caleb with newfound respect, realizing the initial judgments she had made based on appearance, the old truck, and assumed status were shallow compared to the quiet power of experience, integrity, and thoughtful action he embodied. Together they walked the length of the yacht, Victoria holding Lily's hand as Caleb guided them, sharing stories of the meticulous restoration, the importance of patience, and the balance between vision and execution, each word revealing humility and wisdom, illustrating that true achievement is measured in effort, care, and the positive impact on others, not merely in monetary terms or social recognition. The harbor behind them shimmered under the bright morning sun, seagulls gliding gently above, and the soft lapping of water against the hull seemed to echo the peaceful resolution now shared among them. A moment of clarity where pride and ego had given way to understanding and connection. Victoria glanced down at the polished deck beneath her feet, noting how each plank reflected light differently depending on perspective, much like the lessons she had absorbed throughout the auction, and she silently acknowledged the importance of humility, patience, and respect in both business and personal life. Caleb watched her thoughtful expression with a calm satisfaction, sensing the shift in perception, and Lily nestled between them, laughing at her own small discoveries on the deck, embodying the continuation of legacy and learning. As they stepped toward the bow, Victoria spoke softly, voicing appreciation for the experience, for the man who had taught her without force, and for the realization that appearances could never define value. The three stood together, hand in hand, overlooking the harbor, the quiet morning light highlighting the bonds formed, the respect earned, and the beginnings of a new chapter shaped by dignity, understanding, and a shared commitment to honor the past while embracing the possibilities ahead, leaving a lasting impression of grace, healing, and second chances that would remain long after the sun had climbed fully into the sky.